Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
After school? And,
17th. Okay.
okay.
I'd like to call to order the Milton School Committee meeting of January 4th, 2012, and invite people to stand and, as is our custom, salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, on our agenda for this evening, I have two adjustments. Under my report, we'll recognize Linda Lee for a report on the Milton 350th anniversary celebration. This is sort of becoming a recurring event. I think we'll put it on this.
You're stuck with me for the year.
Yeah, I think until we get to June, we're going to hear a lot about this. The other piece is the FY13 budget under the Finance Committee. It neglects here to say vote. We actually have to there's a third part of the budget. We voted two parts of it, the level dollar funding and the level service budget, but there's actually an enhancement piece that we want to present to the Warrant Committee, so that actually requires a vote, and that should have been stated on here. Any other corrections, additions, deletions to the agenda? Linda Lee.
We're going to remove the concussion policy update from this. I'll speak to that.
Okay.
during
Anything else on the agenda? All right, seeing no other things, we'll declare the agenda approved, and we'll move on to citizen speak. I didn't notice, is there a citizen speak list out there? I don't see a list. Anyone want to speak at citizen speak? Seeing none, we will move along to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairman Pavlicek. And I'd like to invite up the Cunningham Site Council. Would you join us, the school committee at the table, please? Thank you in advance for all the work you do, putting yourself out there to be elected and serving on the site council, and coming out
Do you want me to?
on this night with your busy lives to present.
Do you want me to navigate through that for you?
Do you want to sit at her seat?
Yeah, just press that. Do you want me to navigate through that for you?
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
While they're setting up, just here for a minute, I was negligent in recognizing we had a meeting with the Pierce PTO to talk about the budget prior to this, and Assistant Superintendent Phelan and member Kristen Bagley-Jones are still there answering questions, so they will be joining us shortly. Those empty seats here are not their fault. They're busy doing school committee business, and will be joining us shortly as the Pierce PTO ends.
And we apologize to all of you who were here waiting for us.
That's true. We didn't quite make it back by 7:30.
So I'm going to ask Dr. Karen Spalding, the principal of the Cunningham School, to make the introductions of the Site Council and turn it over to you, Cunningham Site Council.
I'm going to try to go back.
There we go.
Thank you very much for having us this evening. We are very excited to be here to share all of the wonderful things that are happening at Cunningham. And I want to begin by introducing the members of the Cunningham Site Council, both those that we have here with us this evening, as well as those who have been working hard with us but are not here this evening. So here on my right, I have Stephanie O'Keefe, who is a parent at Cunningham, parent of a kindergartner and a first grader. On my left here, I have Jeannie Conley, who's parent of a fifth grader and a kindergartner. And next to her is Mrs. Williams, who's a special educator at the Cunningham. And to her left is Linda Thurnese, who is a parent of a fourth grader at the Cunningham. And then also on our site council, we have Miss Mulligan, who's a kindergarten teacher at Cunningham. And then our final teacher slot is shared by two teachers, Mrs. Power, fifth grade teacher, and Miss Senora Gordon, our FLES teacher. And so thank you to all of them who have been working really hard on behalf of Cunningham and its students. And we can, yeah. So we thought we'd begin the presentation this evening with the data because that's usually a good place to start. Although recognizing that you have heard probably several presentations about the MCAS data, we won't dwell there too long, but share with you some of the main observations that we've made. And what we're excited about here is certainly that our accountability status, both in English language arts and mathematics, is no status, which again is a good thing. We're very proud of that. Thank you. We're very proud of that. However, that said, we do recognize that in 3 out of the 4 areas that we achieve that status by making the improvement target as opposed to meeting the target. And so we recognize that we have done great work in terms of improvement, but definitely have more work to do. And yep, the next slide. So what we're particularly proud of, yes.
Sorry, can we go back to the slide before? The low income and African American, where there's a score but nothing else on either side. Can you just tell us what that means?
Yes, the only subgroup at Cunningham for which they report in terms of AYP is the special education subgroup, because we don't have enough, statistically, we don't have enough numbers in those other subgroups. So we certainly get information on individual students, but we just don't get it reported in the full report. Thank you. So what we see here is that in 2010, in ELA, the aggregate and all subgroups, they did not make adequate yearly progress. However, in 2011, we are very proud to say that both in the aggregate and in the subgroups for which it's reported in terms of AYP, we did make AYP. And that is also true in the aggregate and in the subgroups for mathematics. We can go to the next one. This is absolutely my favorite slide of the data. And it's my favorite slide because what it shows is tremendous growth from one year to the next. So what it means is in English language arts, the median student growth percentile increased in 1 year by 19 percentage points, and in mathematics by 27. And that is tremendous growth and is absolutely the result of hard work of teachers and students and families, and we are extremely proud of that. So what did we see in the data? Similar to what we had done in before, we began by looking at data by the standards. And what we noticed is that in grades 3, 4, and 5, we were higher than the state in every area for the aggregate. And so you could start to say, well, which ones were we almost close to the state, or which ones were we a lot more than the state? But then you could be getting down to the difference of one question or not. So we started to peel a little bit more. And what we noticed is the difference between the state and Cunningham open response percent correct. That difference increased with grade level. In other words, we were somewhat above the state in terms of open response in English language arts for 3rd grade. We were a little bit more above the state for 4th grade and a little bit more above the state in 5th grade. And then what we also did was look at our the one subgroup for which we get this kind of information, the special education subgroup. And when we looked at that, we identified some areas that we were below the state. That said, when I say below the state, the way they report the data is it's our special education subgroup compared to all students in the state. And so the areas that popped in English language arts were language, style, and sort of abstract meaning making. And so those are areas that have, in terms of writing and English language arts, are sort of the more abstract areas. Style has to do with voice and developing pieces of writing and considering audience and things like that. So in mathematics, we noticed that grades 3, 4, and 5 were notably higher than the state in all standard areas, and this is again for the aggregate. So for English language arts, we were above the state in every area, and those were mostly single-digit numbers. But for mathematics, we were notably higher, so in some cases by 24 points. And so taking a look at open responses, we noticed that with open response scores, we were higher in mathematics than in ELA for grades 3 and 4, That could be explained because the what's required for an open response in math is different from what's required in ELA. And then finally, areas of relative weakness, again for the special education subgroup, were measurement and number sense. Again, both areas that require some more sort of abstract thinking, conceptual understanding, that kind of thing. So the short story is, what we noticed is, again, writing needs to be a focus area for us at the Cunningham and for others as well. But based on our data, the work that we began in terms of the writing initiative last year, that we really needed to continue that. I get to hand it over to Jeannie.
Right, I'm going to go with that. We'll continue talking about writing.
Great.
We'll talk about high academic achievement for all students, the curriculum Common Core. Cunningham, as all other elementary schools, have the curriculum documents that were given out at the open house that were, I believe, created this past summer. And the parents received them at open house, and they were very helpful for the teachers to explain and for the parents to bring home concrete piece of paper with the goals. There's also a lot of parents brought them to the parent-teacher conference, or the teacher was able to reference that during the parent-teacher conference, that document. As Dr. Spalding just mentioned, we're continuing the Cunningham Writing Initiative and assessing current writing instruction at Cunningham. For the writing initiative, teachers, individual teachers or on the grade level, determined what type of writing they wanted to improve on last year. And they were able to order journals or reading response journals or science journals, science notebooks. Some had math journals. Some were individual teachers and some were grade level, deciding to do a project together, science journals or the like. And they used these tools to, as you saw in the results, and as we're hoping continues in the data, to improve the writing. The School Site Council created a document this year. It was a survey, a writing survey, and it was given to all the teachers at Cunningham. It was anonymous. However, you did have to indicate what level you taught at, so, you know, as anonymous as it could be. We came up with just some simple survey questions. How much time during the week do you spend teaching writing? What writing tools do you use? Or what writing program? Maybe the Collins writing, a lot used writing workshop, or 6+1 traits. And Dr. Spalding can talk about the survey results quickly now.
Absolutely.
Yep.
One of the things that we learned is that there are many research-based best practice programs being used at the Cunningham. And so we were excited to know that. And then that also said to us in terms of next steps, so great, and we'll celebrate that we're using research-based best practices, but also has started the conversation about how can we create a more streamlined, focused approach in terms of the way that we talk about writing to kids, the language that we use when we're providing feedback to families so that families can be supportive of the writing. And so it gave us great insight into what was being used, to what degree was that program being used, how was it being used, how often, things like that. The other thing that was extremely valuable is we asked teachers about what they saw as their need in terms of professional development in writing, and we gave them several sort of options. And one area that most were interested in was really thinking about and understanding better how to implement writing portfolios. And so that's particularly exciting as well, because that's something I hear and teachers hear from parents really wanting to have it's kind of a little easier in mathematics when you can send home the math quiz, or you send home the math test, or you send home the spelling test. But to really get a sense of growth over time of writing really requires the careful collection and thoughtful collection of work. And it's good for communication to families, it's good for the teacher, and it's especially good for the student in really seeing that growth over time. So that's an area that we'll start to talk more about and figure out what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. And that speaks to the next bullet, student achievement gap, targeting the professional development that teachers really feel is needed the most. We do Study Island, as do the other schools. We have math is a slam dunk, which actually begins next Saturday. And then we have before school and after school support for math and ELA. Okay, now you want to talk.
Sure. So in terms of thinking about student achievement and high expectations, we have conversations about students at every point on the continuum in terms of their skills and achievement and that kind of thing. And so one of the programs that we are very excited about that we haven't figured it all out, but we definitely have learned some things and took a risk and dove in this year to really figure out how we can more flexibly group students and more flexibly provide programming for students at all ends of the spectrum. And so one of the things that we tried this year is we selected students based on a range of assessment data from each of the three. We have 3 third-grade classrooms, and so selected a few students from each of those 3 third-grade classrooms, and then creatively used staff to provide a experience for that group of kids while providing the targeted support that the other students needed. And we have found that it's wonderful for the kids, all of the kids who are involved. We found it's particularly wonderful for the teacher, both the teacher who's doing this enrichment group, which for the first go at it focused on data analysis quite intentionally, and then has also been good for those who need that extra targeted support. And so we tried that out in 3rd grade. We're doing a similar thing. We've been doing that since about October, and then we started a similar thing in 4th grade where I am proud to say that 20 of our current 4th graders scored advanced on last year's mathematics MCAS test. And so we wanted to provide a way to push them a little bit more. And so created, for a period a week again, a sort of flexible model in terms of grouping to provide them with some more enrichment and provide some more support, targeted support for students who are either struggling or even average, sort of middle of the road in terms of their mathematics skills. And so we are thinking outside the box in terms of what that looks like. It's definitely flexible in the sense that once a student's in, it doesn't mean they're always in this group. It means that we're really trying to figure out how do we constantly use assessment data so we can really figure out for this topic in this subject area who's really strong, who really needs some more support, who can we really push in a deeper way. And so we're really excited about those 2 pilots.
Aaron, that starts to perhaps get at a question I had about achievement gaps. So would some of the individuals in any particular subgroup that were underperforming be in that group or that type of group?
The enrichment group?
Advanced enrichment?
It's based, what
Or
we're...
was that for higher performance?
It's for higher, that particular one's for higher performing, but it's higher performing by topic within a subject area. And so what we're hoping to eventually be able to really figure out in terms of structure is ongoing assessment, ongoing reflection on data, so that that group really changes as, because some kids are really good at, spatial visualization and geometry. So they might be in that group for that topic, but then they really struggle with some numeracy topics. So we haven't figured that out yet, but that's really where we're headed, is to really think flexibly instead of having everybody do the same thing all the time. Really think about how we can use our staff flexibly and use the space flexibly as well.
So, in looking at performance, this is AYP. Did you see differences in gender performance? Did boys do better than girls on math, or did girls do better than boys on English language arts?
We had a gender gap in 4th grade English language arts. We did not have it in 4th grade mathematics, and not so much in the other subjects for the other, but it was noticeable in English language arts 4th grade last year.
So where you see that, and in the African American subgroup, they're about 10 points lower on English language arts and even larger gap on math. What do you do about that?
In English language arts or math or both?
Both?
Or do you,
All-
okay.
All of those. Girls where they were underperforming, or the boys where they were underperforming, and African American students where they were underperforming. What's the strategy?
So we have multiple things that are going on to address that. Some of those we'll talk about in the presentation, but
Okay, well, if
Most-
you're going to get to that.
we'll get to some
I'll
of
wait.
those, but most especially to respond to your question, most especially looking at student work as part of professional development, and that is having a very focused, deep conversation about a small group of students, one that's at the higher end, one who's struggling in the middle, one who's struggling at the lower end, and having a very focused, evidence-based conversation about what students are producing, what it means, and then developing targeted strategies for those students. So, but we have some other things as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, moving down.
May I don't usually interrupt the presentations, but this is worth commenting on. The school committee picked up during another school's presentation, and I think the Cunningham should deserve credit, and the principal, by beginning to pilot this idea in the area of math. And again, our children are not grouped at the elementary level by ability, and nor should they ever be. And so, but there are children of all different abilities, and we just talked at the Pierce School that you need to have a talented teacher to, in English, math, science, and social studies, provide for all abilities and all children. So Dr. Spalding last year, to Mr. Walker's point, with the math elementary coordinator, met a small group of fifth grade boys, and met them every single week before school, and their gains in MCAS and achievement were extraordinary. And so the principal taught these children, and the math coordinator. And then Dr. Spalding and her third grade teachers were willing to take this risk and step outside the box, step outside even their union box and their free time, and take these children who, again, have mastered the material and in the subject area, bring them further. Again, move the system ahead, move those children and challenge those children, while the children who are in the classroom, again, are getting more gains because it's a smaller group, to the issue that we just brought up about class size. And at every single school, through Dr. Spalding's initiative with her third grade, spin-offs are happening at grades 3, 4, and 5, because the differences in ability and the span become larger and larger. So at 3, 4, and 5, I think the school committee members picked up on it at the last school's presentation. There are different versions in each school, and when we meet as a leadership team, we talk about what's worked and what hasn't. So again, to this idea about the achievement gap and raising the bar for all children, the more opportunities you give to work with small groups. This is differentiated instruction at its best. When you take people and you expand the lesson, I've often said for some of these children that are gifted in these areas, it must be painful to sit there and say, I got this a half hour ago. And so you're able to take those children, and to Dr. Spalding's point, who might in measurement be really skilled. But then when it might come to computation, they need more skill in drill. So I want to compliment the Cunningham. They started the initiative, and to the point we talk about our 4 elementary schools, our pride is that, again, you're not going to hear at the Tucker there's a program that's not happening at the Collycott. Again, it's all in the hands of the teacher, but we want, when there's outstanding things happening, for all of the children in Milton to have those opportunities. So I want to compliment you, Dr. Spalding, and the teachers at the Cunningham for really taking this and in fast, swift way providing for students, and for all students who there's a gap in their achievement levels, but also children on all ends of the spectrum, enriching them.
The last bullet on this slide is the individual student recognition. And we've given some examples here. We publish student work. Dr. Spalding publishes student work in the bulletin. And we have a spring awards assembly with the 4th and 5th grade, where they receive awards for reading, math, and the Kindness Award, the Cunningham Kindness Award, which is very special. We have study island recognition for answering a number of questions right, for a number of hours that you, or number of times you log on, or number of hours you spend on, number of questions you answer. The Principal's Advisory Team is a 5th grade group that Dr. Spalding works with, and if maybe you want to elaborate on some of the things that you do.
Sure. So the principal's advisory team consists of 5th grade students, and they are a lively bunch, and we talk about school issues and what concerns them, and they represent their peers as well as students in the other grade levels. And we work on a variety of projects in the schools. So when there's community service projects, they help out. We talk about school culture, and we work on a variety of things to really improve the Cunningham community. And they are a brilliant, bubbly group who are absolutely committed to doing wonderful things for the Cunningham. And so it's a good, I hope they enjoy it as much as I do, because it's a highlight for sure. So in terms of excellence in the classroom, and specifically engaging all students, one of the things, and this gets back to your question about the achievement gap, is we have time in terms of staff meetings, time with teachers, so as professionals. There, we have time at the district, district-wide, so on professional development days, for example. There is time to develop as a professional through the evaluation process. There's time to develop as a professional with administrators working with teachers. And so what we tried to do is pull all of those pieces together and really focus all of those pieces. And we focused on excellence in teaching, specifically really focusing on writing, but really excellence in teaching. And we began the year actually defining excellence in teaching, and said out loud, what do we mean by that? What does that look like? How do we know when we walk into a classroom that excellence in teaching is happening? And so we, as a staff, started to define what that meant. We read some research about what does research say about excellence in teaching, and then focused our work on really developing concrete strategies to support students in class. And so, for example, at our most recent staff meeting, we focused on providing effective feedback on writing. And so instead of the check or check plus at the top of the paper when a student doesn't really know what that means, really thinking about how can we really focus our efforts, give really specific focused feedback to students so that they can develop in their work. And if that effective feedback doesn't happen, then not only does the student at the far end of the spectrum, who's really a solid writer, not progress, neither does the one who's really struggling. And so that's actually good for all students. It's also helpful for families in terms of communication. So we did that at our last staff meeting. Our next staff meeting is to dig deeply into sort of take stock in where are students now, those students that we were talking about and excited about at the beginning of the year when we were first got our hands on the MCAS data, looking at that again, looking at additional data that we now have from math assessments and that kind of thing, and really talking kid by kid about what are we doing to support each of these students. So we have a variety of programs and supports in place. So we have math as a slam dunk for students who are in learning and needs improvement in mathematics. We have the before school and after school program. We have, we're looking at some creative scheduling to get some open time on computers for Study Island during the day for students who might be limited in their internet access. And so we have all of these pieces, but we need to sit down as a staff again and come together and support each other as we talk student by student in terms of what pieces are in place. And that's our next step in terms of the staff meeting. The tying it into the evaluation process, we have, as you know, a evaluation process that we use with teachers, and one of those steps is the collaborative, what we call the collaborative independence cycle. And so when I have conversations, or other administrators working with my teachers at Cunningham, when we have conversations about planning that collaborative project or planning that independent project, we have that focus on excellence in teaching. And so an example of that is a teacher in the building who is actually doing a case study on just one student. And she's taking that one student and she's digging really, really deeply with that one student, collecting work, interviewing the student, really trying to understand what's going on with that particular student who is struggling both in reading and writing, and communicating all of that really deep data with the student's parents, and is learning a tremendous amount just about that one student, but all of what she's learning just about that one student is absolutely affecting how she's working and the kinds of strategies that she's trying with other students in the classroom. And so it's that trying to link all of those pieces really together. And then in terms of, did we make it through the, can you go back 1 second? Sorry. I know time is getting thin. So in terms of, and I've already stated this, but I'll say it one more time. So professional development, which we've touched on a lot, but it's really how do we pull all of that together? And the district-wide professional development that's been offered, we as principals and coordinators got together, and it was a focus on writing, so it linked with the work that we were doing at Cunningham. In terms of technology, we have been chipping away at trying to get full smart boards at Cunningham, and we're getting there, and also providing professional development. What you see down in the corner there, by the way, is one of our teachers using a smart board. Students are story detectives there, and that's Miss Orenberger, one of the Cunningham teachers. Yeah, thank you.
There are several ways that we communicate with parents and staff. And one of the ways, Dr. Spalding has a bi-weekly newsletter that she sends out. It's very informative. Lots of information about what's going on in the school. There are bulletins, parent-guardian informational meetings, and coffees. We have some wonderful collaborative relationships with groups in the town. We have a very good relationship with Curry College. They have provided us with many student teachers over the years, as well as we also have college, Curry College students, the athletes who have come over during their spare time and have helped out during recess and worked with the children, and that's been very successful. We also have volunteers from Fuller Village, and the seniors citizens that have come to our school have been just fabulous. Many are retired school teachers. Not that that's a requirement by any means, but they're wonderful, full of life. They enjoy the children, and it's a real valuable asset. There's parent-guardian involvement. Oh, I think this is what you were going to say about the...
Here, we're going to hand it to Jeannie.
Oh, Gina, sorry.
That's okay. Lots of parent-guardian involvement at Cunningham, the typical PTO. We have PTO meetings, and the PTO in the past year and a half, I think, has really provided presentations. People have come. We've had a bullying expert come. We had the nitpicker lice people come and talk to us. They're very timely presentations that they have. And PTO, of course, has opportunities for volunteering, many, many opportunities. Also, room parents. There are sometimes too many of us tripping over each other, but that's a good thing because the parents really want to be involved in the classrooms. Some other outreach activities that the parents are involved in, Cradles to Crayons drives. The teachers and the parents have organized collections for members of the military, where we've sent Halloween candy, we've sent phone cards, and we've had children that make holiday cards or thank you cards for the military. On Thanksgiving, we create Thanksgiving baskets, and Christmas time we have the snowball giving drive also. Other opportunities, there's an Meet the Artist program, where parents volunteer to go in, I believe it's K1 and 2 this year? K1 and 2, and 3
3
classrooms,
this year.
and give these fantastic presentations about, a certain artist, and then the children imitate the artist, and they learn so much about different artists. And then the morning math leagues that take place beginning in January at Cunningham into the spring from grades 2 to 5. There are the Continental Math Leagues. Grade 5 is the Math Olympiad. We often have 25, 30 students each grade level sign up, and they come at 7:25 in the morning, and they spend an hour doing math. And it's a great, great opportunity for parents to volunteer. We always have plenty of coaches, and we also feel that this really helps with their word problem achievement in the classroom. So those are some opportunities that the parents have to participate.
Respecting human differences is very important at the Cunningham, as it is, of course, in the whole school system. The implementation of the anti-bullying law, we had quite a bit of professional development. In August, the teachers participated in a whole morning of information on the law. There is a curriculum that has been developed for the anti-bullying. We also have a diversity committee, and they have been, their goal is to review the curriculum to see if there is a diverse role models, and if there is enough diversity within the curriculum. We also have a program called Celebrating Our Differences. It's not listed up there, but it's kind of a favorite of mine. That has been going on at the Cunningham for many, many years. It targets the 4th grade population. It's a parent-run program, and it focuses on informing the children and sensitizing the children to individuals that have specific challenges, and just making them more sensitive to their needs and to their individuality and to their accomplishments in spite of their challenges. Part of that program also focuses on learning styles, so that the children can think about what type of learning style they have, and also on multiple intelligence. In what ways are they smart? So we also focus on that, and it's always been a very successful program.
Sure. Can you go back just one second? Sorry. So our diversity, I just want to address the Ethnobotanical Garden and the Everybody Cooks Rice event that we're very excited about. So our diversity committee meets formally once a month, and additionally as necessary. And thanks to the Milton Foundation for Education, we have some money to establish an ethnobotanical garden, which is essentially looking at how cultures use plants and then creating a garden, so taking stock of the families that are at Cunningham and their backgrounds and how those cultures have used plants historically, and then creating a garden that represents those cultures through the plants. And so we are excited to get that underway in the spring. And in addition, we have a diversity event coming up focused on a book, Everybody Cooks Rice, that Connolly brought with us this evening. And it's a story written by a local author, and she actually came and did a visit at the Cunningham last spring. And it's around this idea that we are all very different, but everybody cooks rice. And so we're going to have an event where families will bring their favorite rice dish, and we'll have the author visit for family evening, so we're excited about that as well. And so in terms of risk-taking and innovation, we've mentioned some of these pieces throughout the presentation, so I won't drag it on too much longer. But again, that piloting the advanced enrichment groups and really headed on that journey of figuring out how to use our staffing, use our space flexibly. That's what we've been thinking a lot about and don't have all the answers to, but definitely have been piloting some things. Cunningham after-school sessions, definitely modeled after the Pierce after-school sessions, and we piloted it in the fall, and it had tremendous turnout. The students loved it, the teachers loved it, so we will definitely do it again in the spring, in classes where everything from arts and crafts to French film to all kinds of things. And then I mentioned before, but research-based best practices. We have woven that into what we do in terms of professional development, and as well as presenting it. I did bring copies of the latest newsletter in case anyone would like one, if that's appropriate. But weaving the research into some of the information that goes home to families as well, about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Accreditation, the kindergarten group has been doing a lot of work preparing for that, and they did a family survey, and that group has been looking at that data and moving forward. And then finally, in terms of student mentoring, I mentioned this before, but providing leadership opportunities for students, and that's the principal's advisory team. We have book buddies, we have fifth graders who help at kindergarten recess, so really thinking of a lot of different ways in which kids can get involved in the Cunningham community. That's the last one.
Excellent. Any questions from the committee? Thank you very much. You do.
I do. Sorry, I was raising my hand. Sorry. That was wonderful. It's so exciting, and you just seems like that you touch every aspect of the child's life, not just, you know, when they're sitting in the classroom. You reach out to touch every aspect of their life, and that's what's so exciting to me. Specifically, I have just two quick questions. You talked about the the principal advisory group. How often do you meet with that group?
We meet formally every other week during their lunch and recess, but because we're working on projects, it ends up being more than that. So, for example, one of the goals of the diversity committee is to really take stock of the literature that we have at the Cunningham, and is it how representative or not? Is it of diverse cultures and ethnic backgrounds and things like that? And so the leadership group will be helping with that project, so that will definitely be more than just once a week. We have to sort of map out what that's going to look like.
And how do students get, do they apply for that? Do you choose names out of a hat? How is that? Are they nominated?
They receive a list of opportunities at the beginning of the year, so that includes doing the Pledge of Allegiance, helping at kindergarten recess, helping opening milk cartons in the cafeteria, things like that. And that's one of the options, and so they rank those, and then from those, I randomly choose 10 for the principal's advisory team. It was going to be 8, but then I went to 10, and we might go to 12, I don't know. And then if they don't make it on that, then I have that list so that as special projects come up, we can pull them in that way as well.
That's great. Very exciting. Just one other question, going back to the writing. So you talked about giving really informed feedback to the students, and I just want to applaud you for that, because that's just so valuable, not only for the students so that they can monitor their growth, but also for the families, as you said. Are you using a rubric to score their writing at all, or is that not?
Not yet. Not yet. That's the part of the work, both with the Looking at Student Work protocol as well as the conversations that we've started about the effective feedback, is setting us on that pathway to create rubrics to really, again, give more information and more useful information to the students, the teachers, and the families.
That's great.
Some of the programs that some of the teachers are using in writing, though, do include rubric.
Right.
You know, so they're using it individualized by classroom. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr.
And,
Dennis.
Just so it doesn't get lost, congratulations on the student growth percentage gains. Those are pretty phenomenal.
Yes.
Dennis.
How do you handle special needs kids that are also in the diversity group?
In terms of supporting them in the classroom?
So you have a support group for kids that are in a diverse group, and then there are special needs that are in that diversity group. How are you handling those kids? Am I not
Not
clear?
sure I understand.
So you have kids from different ethnic backgrounds and different countries, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have those kids that are also in the special needs category. Is there help for those kids?
Instruction in terms of academic support in
Yeah.
the classroom, absolutely. And that looks, there's a wide range in terms of what that looks like. And
bring that
so
up?
it could
Will you bring
be
that up?
targeted support from the special educator, but it also is and should be lots of strategies that are being implemented by the regular education teachers. So when we talk about writing, for example, writing for some kids means a very scaffolded, structured, maybe with a very detailed graphic organizer to really get them started and really help them organize ideas because maybe they're struggling with how to organize their ideas. Whereas another student along the continuum might not need that particular support. And that's the kind of thing a regular ed teacher would do. So that's that sort of differentiation within the classroom. And then we also have certainly special educators who provide inclusion services. Our goal is full inclusion, but we do have some pull-up services for specific needs, but our goal is definitely full inclusion. So a special educator working with a regular educator in a co-teaching model to provide support to students as well. Did that answer your
Yeah,
question?
that answered it.
Okay.
Good.
Ms. Kelly?
Congratulations on a fabulous presentation, but also I think I have two that have graduated from Cunningham, and certainly programming has continued to evolve, and it sounds like it's really striving to meet the needs of individual kids, which is essentially what we're all about. I wanted to go back to your observation or the data telling us that in the open response percent correct that it went from 2% to 9% to 16%. And I wanted to know if you drill down to the programs, because one of the things that we talk about when we talk about parents choosing between French and English is that sometimes the French kids, because they're learning in French to start out, take a few more years to catch up, I guess we call it. And does that correlate at all to programs, or how far did we drill down on the data and establish some of that?
We didn't drill down that far with the MCAS data, but that as a question has absolutely been raised to me as well from parents who are thinking about sort of signing up. What does that mean, when they hit third grade and now are getting sort of formal English instruction for the first time since kindergarten. But that's definitely a next step because we want to know what kids need.
Right.
Regardless of what the reasons are, we want to know what they need,
Right.
and we want to provide programming that will give that to them.
Right.
And for those students having formalized English instruction for the first time, we want to make sure that what we're doing for them is what they need
Right.
to get that well-rounded education.
And then another question is just I applaud you in your effort and excellence in teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I'd ask, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you were to say what are the two obstacles to you, getting you and your team there quicker, I guess, could you articulate some of those things? Is it time? Is it professional development time? It's one of the things we talk about a lot. If you only have one opportunity a month to meet with your team, how long does that stretch out your goal to get to something like creating the rubrics that you talked about? So what are the things that you might be able to speak to in terms of getting you closer to your goal sooner?
More time with teachers together, talking to each other about student work, about instruction, would absolutely get us to that sooner. What we've tried to do is look at what's in place, so the grade level meetings that occur every other week, the staff meetings that occur once a month, and really use every minute. I always say if I can say it, I can put it in an email. I don't have to stand there and say it to you. So we use those minutes, those precious minutes, for some hopefully effective, useful professional development that really focuses on talking about teaching and excellence in teaching.
And I guess, back when some of my kids were at Cunningham, we did have professional development half days. And I know it's taboo now and nobody wants to talk about that. However, to me, that's a concentrated amount of time scheduled, that you can attain some of the the things that you've talked about. And I guess I'm wondering, just as a system, is it something to consider, even on a short-term period, for a year or two, for us to sort of take that leap to get us to the place where principals think we need to be? And I guess I'm just throwing that out for consideration. I know that would cause consternation for a lot of families.
but I think
we
it's
do
a-
have community schools, and, you know, I just think it's something we should talk about, just from, even from a planning perspective.
I think it's a great, to put it out there, and it is, when you asked Dr. Spalding the question, quite honestly, our professional development time is woefully small. And we have 3, 4 days, and then this 10-hour option. But the time after school, 45 minutes at the end of the day, is not quality professional development time. To Ms. Kelly's point, we've talked, Ms. Kelly, about the days we have, whether we divide them into 8 half-days, and to Ms. Kelly's point, you know, working with families and what they do about daycare. Because, again, if you had regular time once a month that all the 3rd grade teachers in town got together, or all of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers in your own school. So in our contract negotiations and looking forward, for the leadership team and working with the school committee, it is an issue for the Milton Public Schools, the professional development time. If you heard between the lines, Dr. Spalding is snatching some time here, or we've come to trying to negotiate for teachers' lunchtime, if they'd all have lunch together and we take that time. But it's a 40-minute period by the time they drop the children off at the CAF and pick the children up. But it is a huge issue for the Milton Public Schools professional development time. And if I might, Mrs. Kelly asked at the beginning on the MCAS scores, and I think it's very important. A huge achievement this year are all of the groups that have 40 or more children at the elementary have made AYP. But we do have an issue of children whose family have identified as receiving free and reduced lunch, low income identified. District-wide, Ms. Kelly brought up that there aren't enough children at the Cunningham. But in our district-wide scores, if we picked up all of those children across the district, we have an AYP issue for that particular subgroup. Across the district, we don't have that for African-American children. We don't have that for children with special ed. But, so what we've done is we've given the principals to work with the teachers the feedback who those children are. Because if we don't work and target that group, to Mr. Walker's point, then next year they'll have those children's MCAS scores, and those children, if there's enough children in a particular school, those children are not making AYP. So we have to make sure that those children get their services, they're targeted to this slam dunk. So when I meet with the leadership group, I'll say, you know, every child who did not make AYP or has been identified as having needing English or math or science or social studies instruction, are you targeting those children first for the Saturday program? When we give this money, we talked about the 2 clubs. I'll sit down with the leadership team, and Karen Spalding will tell me in one of those 2 clubs, everybody at grades 3, 4, and 5, or she might choose 4 and 5, who needs reinforcement, they'll receive the benefit of being in one of those after-school clubs. So we target every single minute. But to Ms. Kelly's point, we do have an issue, which we, again, targeting the instruction and identifying the children and identifying, to Dr. Spalding's point, where they need the assistance, identifying that group before the size of the group is large enough, and then that would be a group that the Cunningham or another school might not make AYP. So that's an issue when we say we dig down into the data that is identified and that we're working on.
Lynn Lee.
I just want to say one final thing to go back to the issue of time. That's not a Milton Public School problem. That's a problem in education in every school district today, I believe. So I think it's great that we're beginning to discuss it and name it, because there just isn't enough time for teachers to plan and do all this good work that needs to be done.
Any other questions? Well, again, thank you all for coming.
you.
Thank you for being
Great
patient
night
for
for all of you.
Nice job.
being patient and waiting for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, pass them
She wants
around.
those newsletters
Pass
passed
them
out.
around. Here,
Mr.
pass
Johnson,
them
can you
around.
take those newsletters? She wants those passed out, I can tell, Dr. Spalding's. Moving right along, if that's all
Your
right.
report, yes.
I want to remind the public and the school committee that January 16th is Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s 212, the Milton Community's annual memorial celebration. And again, at our last meeting, I was it's the Concord Baptist Church that's now in Temple Shalom. And that event begins Monday, Martin Luther King, January 16th, the celebration of his birthday, that's on the 15th, but the celebration on the 16th begins at 5:30. And this is an event that all of the Milton Public School children students send writings, they send art, they perform that night. So I will guarantee you, the press will be out about that night, but if you circle your calendar, Monday, January 16th, the Concord Baptist Church, where Temple Shalom was, 180 Blue Hill Avenue, starting at 5:30. And it's a great night because if you don't have the whole night until 8 or 9 o'clock, you can come for any hour, whether it's sharing the food or the gospel choir or the St. Mary's of the Hills liturgical dances. A simple supper will be served, display of student work, and the memorial celebration. So if you would circle that night on your calendars. The Pierce Players, it's now January. We've been leading up to this. Circle on your calendars, January 19th or the 20th, or you can go both nights. Guys and Dolls, a night of the Pierce Players that you'll be as entertained as if you were in New York City or Boston. John Phelan is their agent. He could go on and on about this presentation under the direction of Bill DeShane. It's life-changing. As I look around, many of your children have participated in this presentation. Another night for those viewing who have children coming to the age of entering kindergarten, or if you have neighbors who have kindergarten-age children, our kindergarten information night is January 25th at 7 o'clock in the Milton High School auditorium. That's the night, if you want a very exciting night. We had another meeting scheduled, and I had to reschedule it. I think that and graduation might be highlight nights for me as a superintendent and all the professionals that are there. A lot of anticipation, even with people who it's not their first. Oh, I'm looking at Matt Gillis. He told me, you can put me out every single night, plan my schedule all year, but on January 17th, my son's going to kindergarten, and I'm going to kindergarten information night. And that brought back to me how important this night is for, I say to the parents and guardians, it's the beginning of a 13-year relationship. And hopefully it's a positive, wonderful relationship that flourishes around the child. Tonight we made our apologies that we had a terrific night, and then Ms. Bagley-Jones and John Phelan joined us. I don't know, they stayed another hour and a half with a phenomenal group at the Pierce School of Parents and Guardians. Budget presentation, our FY13 budget presentation. It was a great kickoff, lots of interest. The questions were unbelievable. So on the web, we'll have posted tomorrow night the Milton High School presentation at 7 o'clock here in the library. January 9th, the Cunningham Collicott at 6:30 in their library. January 10th, the Tucker at 7 o'clock in their library. And January 12th, the Glover at 6:30 in their library. And in the middle of that presentation, we have our fated visit presentation with Milton's Warrant Committee, January 11th, and the school committee presents to the Warrant Committee. But if tonight is any indication of Milton Public School parents and guardians and how they're vested in their schools, the group that came out to hear about next year's budget, we said coming back here, it reaffirms your faith in the whole parents and guardians and their involvement and support of the Milton Public Schools. And again, I'm going to ask Ms. Bagley-Jones, she doesn't know it, but a small plug to start to circle on your calendar, and you'll be getting, students will have a meeting next week, and the community will be asked for pledges our annual walkathon is February 11th. Ms. Bagley-Jones, if
Yes,
you might
thank
for a
you.
moment.
No, I don't mind at all. February 11th is the 4th annual walkathon. 4th. I thought it was 3rd, but I was corrected. It's the 4th. And we're looking for student leaders, so I expect to see you two at the meeting next week. Anybody who is a student wants to help plan what the event looks like, because when we first started this, we were threatening to cut sports, spring sports, and everybody was in uproar, and we raised a lot of money. The next year, we didn't cry wolf was at the door. We didn't raise as much money. Last year, we were able to raise, I think, $30,000. The athletic department budget depends on that. This is not extra money. This is not for team uniforms. This is not the boosters fundraising. This is directly to the athletic and the club's budget. So if we don't make our goal of $30,000, then we'll be back at school committee to say we didn't make our goal. What are we going to do? What are we going to cut? So people really need to get behind this, and you'll be hearing about this a lot. But the students take a leadership role in it. They're the ones who make it happen. But the community members, school committee members, teachers can support, sponsor any student who's walking. It's grade 8th students from Pierce are invited, and every freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. We want 1,000 kids at the event. We have 2,000 at the high school. We should be able to get 1,000 kids at the event. We have almost 1,000 kids in sports and in clubs, so if not more, right? So this is more than a plug than you expected, Mary, but we're in the middle of organizing this, and it's less than a month away, right, or a little more than a month away. What, Dennis? Did you want to sponsor somebody?
I may.
Good. There's no may. You will.
Pressured me into
Yes, you will. So questions about that, or anything that you can think of that I missed, that we need to raise $30,000 at the walkathon on February 11th, minimum.
So Kristen Bagley-Jones and Laura
Oh,
Kessler.
yes, Laura Kessler.
Laura Kessler has a PowerPoint that could go Broadway that will really stir your heart and bring you out.
Yes.
I
Ms.
think
Kelly.
Ms. Kelly had a question for you.
Just, do we ask for business
Yes.
sponsorship?
Last year, the kids, we actually wrote a letter, and the students went out and got business sponsorships that we raffled off, the raffle raised a fair amount of money. Milton Hospital, Fitness Unlimited, places like that, all have supported the walk every single year. So we're looking for business support too, even if it's just raffle items that we can raffle off and sell the raffle tickets the day of, because people like that, and we made a good amount of money on that. So to answer your question. So any businesses, we're looking for you. Thank you.
And to Ms. Bagley-Jones's point about this athletic budget, the teachers step up, and they have 2 nights in March, circle March 29th and the 30th, and they raised $18,000 last year for athletics, clubs, and activities. Again, not for the extras, but to really fill that budget deficit on the faculty talent show. So that's going to happen again this year. I always say, I've begged them to only have it 1 night, but they want to have it 2 nights, and they do fill the auditorium both nights. I should ask them if school committee members could participate this year. Maybe a group.
Oh, Linda Lee would love.
Maybe some kind of group presentation. And so also, would you circle on your calendars the MFE celebration? I've invited the MFE to come to one of your citizen speaks during the meeting. The big beach ball at the Quincy Marriott, March 10th. And again, we talk about all the unbelievable work of the MFE, and this is really their huge fundraising effort. The thrust this year is for literacy in the classrooms, and they also fund the mini grants with these hard-earned dollars. And Milton, this is a very exciting event. Our students who are in our special ed program at the high school, along with their best buddies, children in regular ed who step up and they go and they do activities on Saturdays during the school day. Last year, a very moving moment was when the whole group went to the Massachusetts Best Buddies prom. And we had a bus in front of Milton High School, and everybody went dressed to the nines, and they went off to this prom at Bentley College. Well, I'm proud to tell you they heard about our field house, so we are the proud hosts of this year's Best Buddies of Massachusetts prom on March 31st in our field house. And we'll make sure we repeat the date and make sure you're all there dressed to the nines so that you'll fold right into the crowd and you won't look different, and you'll look like you'll be brought back to your own prom days. So we're very proud, and I want to compliment the high school leadership who agreed when Best Buddies called to host that event. So wonderful things happening. In your pack, I've given you your green packet for today. That's really self-explanatory with a follow-up on a lot of these events, the dates, and information that will be discussed later in tonight's meeting. Thank you, Chairman Pavlicek.
All right. My report, just very briefly, Superintendent Gormley mentioned the PTO meetings. We are at that roadshow season where we're going out to talk to the various schools about the budget, and we have our warrant committee meeting, as she mentioned, next Wednesday night. So line up, your TV dinners for next week, because we're out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. This is that season when we're explaining the possible ramifications of the budget, and which will more or less take shape as we come to the warrant committee meeting in early February, and with the budget to be presented to town hall. So if you have a chance to make one of those, it's worth your while. Before I turn it over to Ms. Sheridan on the Milton's 350th, I just want to mention one other piece, sort of a mini school building committee report. You may recall that when we put the solar panels on the roof of Cunningham and Collycott, that was to be partially funded by a grant from the MTC, the Milton, Massachusetts Technology Collaborative. The town last week received the money. We received $440-some thousand in grant money. The effect of that will be used to pay part of the cost of the bonds that funded the whole school building project. Since those were exactly a debt exclusion override, this is somewhat of an underride for next fiscal year. $440,000 will work out to roughly, on the average, roughly $55 a house decrease in property taxes for next year. So it's always good to say something nice like that. So that was received last week. That will be part of the budget for the town in the spring, and since that is basically a receivable back from money from the override, it goes to defer the cost of partially defer the cost of the override. So that's good news to everyone in Milton, not just
And that was
parents.
no easy feat on the side of Glenn Pavlicek and Tony Cacello working through that grant and securing that money for the town.
Tony did most of the work.
Congratulations.
Just so we don't raise expectations, it would result in that property tax decrease, all other things remaining constant.
Right.
If nothing else changed.
Right.
then.
No, but I mean, that much, $440,000 against it is putting off roughly $50 of whatever next year's property tax would be. Will not necessarily have to take place this year because of that. So that's, it is good news, no matter how you look at it.
Very exciting.
Ms. Sheridan wants to speak on the Milton 350th. Do you have things to hawk tonight?
I did. I was I'm not asking you to pay me any money. But those calendars are still on sale at the Fruit Center and at all of the schools, and all of our memorabilia, in case you missed it at the last school committee meeting, is available at Town Hall. So I hope you will stop by. I'll just give you a little cool aside story. I'm meeting so many amazing people through this process, and one of our volunteers went and delivered a plate, one of the plates I showed last week, to a Milton resident today, and she sent me an email with a picture in it, and she said she delivered this plate to the woman because she has a 300th anniversary plate, and she has a 250th anniversary plate. She sent me a picture of it. It was actually made of Wedgwood. It was spectacular. And so the stories will just keep going throughout the year. It's really exciting. So what I'd really like to do is once a month give you an update of the monthly events, because we're here. We're beginning our, the 2012 is our anniversary celebration year. So our kickoff event will be Saturday, June 21st at the library. It's going to be an art exhibit with many of the artists that you saw in the calendar. 25 Milton residents are going to have their artwork displayed. This opening event is going to have an event for the children, a free event where they can go and create artwork themselves. There'll be the Greg Massaro Jazz Duo will provide entertainment. There'll be light refreshments at the library. And as I said, this will kick off our year-long events.
You did say June 21st. You mean
said
January,
June.
January 21st.
I was wondering if we were going to work backwards.
No, I was just going to do January.
January
June
21st.
is the big celebration. That's why it's stuck in my brain.
So it's
Thank you for
January.
clarifying. Yes.
January what?
21st.
From 2 to 4 p.m. And at the same time, the Milton Historical Society is sponsoring an event, another art exhibit. It's going to be the Clifton Fash Photography exhibit, and that's going to also be held in the library. If you've been around Milton for a while, that's a name you might remember as a photographer, and I think it will be really fun to see some of those displays. I mentioned briefly at our last meeting that we're going to have a fundraiser that's going to be that will be sponsored by the Fruit Center Marketplace, and it's going to be held Thursday, January 26th, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Marketplace Cafe. There are still some tickets available for this. It's going to be an amazing meal with a 4-course dinner with one of Boston's best chefs, Chris Douglas, and he's the owner of Ashmont Grill and Tavallo, and wines paired by Ruby Wines, Dan Michaud of Ruby Wines, and there's a colonial theme meal that's been planned. So you can check out the Fruit Center Marketplace website and make your reservations there. And the Fruit Center is also going to match all pledges or all fundraising up to $5,000 for that event. So it's really wonderful what they're doing for us. And then on January 29th, maybe it will get, or this cold will come back, Cunningham Foundation is offering, is opening up their, not only the park for skating, but also the building for bowling. So it'll be a family afternoon from 2 to 5 o'clock. That's a Sunday. It will be totally free, obviously weather permitting for the outside. And many people have asked me, where is the skating rink at Cunningham Park? So if you're looking at the pool, you look to the left, there's a big field, and weather permitting, if it's cold enough, they'll flood it, and you can skate out there. So mark those dates.
Close your
down.
eyes, you're at Fenway Park.
Yeah, exactly.
Our own Fenway Park.
Milton350anniversary.org is our website. We are updating it daily, so please check it out.
Will there be that many activities every month?
Oh, yeah, some months more. Yeah, and I'm going to the Board of Selectmen's meeting tomorrow night to present them with the $150,000 check. I almost can't say that number, from the Copeland Family Foundation, so it'll be a great night.
Wow.
Thank you. Thanks for bearing with me. Oh, wait, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
Mr. Phelan, you were going to talk about, because what we haven't talked about here are the wonderful
School.
events that the schools have planned.
The schools are very excited to take part in the 350th birthday celebration of the town. Right now, children are working on grade level projects at each school that coincide with their curriculum, that have been worked through with the grade level English language arts and social studies coordinators.